Okay, morning. Good morning to everybody. And it's 10 to 11. It's the second day of Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, it's Aleph Tammuz. And we're doing the fourth part of the Maimed, Vaydaber Elokim is called Vadam Ha'el Leimer Necha Vayelekech. The way this Maimed has gone to date is that we introduced ourselves to Daimim, Tzemeach, Chai, Medaber. And we said that there's a direct relationship between the lowest Madrege Daimim and the highest Madrege Medaber. What is Daimim? Daimim is Oisius. Now, we're going to continue this, but I want to state to point. In other words, I don't want to get too caught up in the previous classes. I want to set up today's class. The last two classes, particularly the one I gave you Friday and also yesterday, we elaborated substantially, for lack of words, on the pathology of speech. The short of it is that speech is something which is extraordinarily difficult, that's been, so to speak, gifted to us. And because it's been gifted to us, we don't really appreciate just how profound it is. Within speech itself, and the gift of speech, there are several aspects. The idea that one moitzer produces different sounds with little effort, no effort. And the idea of ke'ech hatziruf. And then the oisius themselves. The highest inyan is oisius. Just words. This is an idea, it's a mystical idea, obviously, it's a Kabbalistic idea, that that needs to be understood. And the reason it needs to be understood is because it doesn't make sense. In other words, what are words? It's like saying, what are pebbles? What are stones? But of course, just like we know that the greatest novelty about the world isn't that it's beautiful and that it's orderly and that it's sophisticated and that it's complex, but that it is, that it exists. The same is true in communication. Just like matter is the body that holds the soul, which is the creation, words, letters, are the body that holds the soul, the idea of speech. And as counterintuitive as it may be, oisius are mushish and atzmos, just like chemer is mushish and atzmos, and kelim mushish and atzmos. The root of letters are on the highest levels of the neshama, and this is the Lashon Alter Rebbe in Tanya, nefesh malei oisius. And on Thursday, when I taught you this, I actually opened up the Tzadik Vav, I looked at the Maramokim, and we looked up the Sefer Yetzirah, we looked up the Kisvei Arizal, and we found that neither of them say this, that the Alter Rebbe was the one who coined the phrase HaNefesh Malei Oisius. And of course, the concept of a Nefesh Malei Oisius is that the Shadish of Oisius are an Atzmos Amhus. The source of letters are an Atzmos Amhus. The source of letters are the essence of Elokus, in the Eibishter himself. And the same is true in the Neshama. The idea that people are able to speak, there are so many other factors that are required for that to be able to take place, beginning with what's called L'Ruach B'Malala, on the Shama of speech, which animals lahadl do not have, but that's not enough. The Eibush has to plant oisis and etzem nefesh. And if the Eibush would not plant those oisis and etzem nefesh, even if we had the Ruach B'Malala and we had the Heimed Soyes and the Ke'ech Hatziruf, we would have all the ability to speak, but not the words. Because words cannot be created. Either God put them there or they're just not going to be there. Words. So I guess to say what I'm saying in other words is, I always tell my students that Nigla is not as hard as it looks and Chassidus is not as easy as it looks. Many people in Chassidus, specifically, they learn it casually, they learn it platonically, have the sense that every Maimed is saying the same thing in other words. In reality, even when Maimorim are officially saying the same thing, they're oftentimes saying something different in a subtlety, in a nuance. And here's an example. You could read 4 Maimorim that talk about speech, and they'll all say the same things, but each one is focusing on a different point. One will focus on the Ruach Mamalala, one will focus on the Ke'ech Hatziruf. This Maimed is focusing on Oisius. That if Hashem gives us all the tools of speech, including the soul of speech, but He doesn't put words into our nefesh, letters into our nefesh, we can't speak. because you can't create oisius. Oisius comes from atzmus umhus, like the lashon from the Rebbe Maharash. Atzmus umhus get to oisius. This is what we have from before that leads us to what's coming. Now, the rest of the Maimer, which means Perek Dalid and Perek Hey and Perek Vov, which is what we have left. I mean, we may have to learn the beginning of Zion, but the end of Zion we already learned, is about Torah. And there are going to be two conversations about Torah. I was fantasizing about doing this all in one class. I don't know if that's realistic, so possibly we'll have to do it in two classes, which is a lot. It's more than I would have liked to dedicate to this Maimer, especially since we've fallen behind. There's going to be two ideas. Idea number one, when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he gave us words. Before the Eibishter gave us the Torah, we also had words. We also had Torah. And we also had words. B'haraya, people were able to learn Torah. However, excuse me, I'll be back in a second. I'm sorry about that. The word is why I understand it, is that before the Eibishter gave us the Torah, we already had Torah. But we didn't have the words of Torah. No. If you have Torah and you don't have the words of Torah, how do you speak Torah? If you have Torah and you don't have words of Torah, you use worldly words. So Torah, Chochmas Torah, is being carried on oisius that are not oisius Torah. Now, what difference does it make if you carry Torah using other words, or you're carrying Torah using words of Torah itself? Our Maimed is going to argue, and I think you could say even quite logically, that if you use the wrong words to communicate an idea, the idea gets across. But the infinity is lost. In other words, how that idea is connected to other ideas, and how that idea is connected to an infinity, the words that are carrying it are a misfit. They're not right. So here's a Maimed. It gives us a whole new spin on Matan Torah, right? What happened when Hashem gave us the Torah? The classic question. Well, we had the Torah from before, so what changed? How many answers are there to this question? So, of course, standard, we would say the idea of Dera B'Tachteinim, elevating physical things, right? How many Morim of the Rebbe talk to that? Then, of course, in the last Maimor, we had this idea of Lamed, that every time we learn, we're repeating after Hashem. The idea of Ratzon Ha'elyon, that Torah is what Tia Machlefes, this is the Chiddush of Matan Torah. Here's another one, right? I just mentioned three different spins on the Chiddush of Matan Torah from before Matan Torah, even though we had the Torah from before. Our Maimor is another one, and I'm sure there's a half a dozen more. That by Matan Torah, we got the words of Torah. In other words, we got the words that match the Torah. It's almost if you were to say, if Hashem puts into the nefesh of a human being, Malaya Asius, Bligvol Asius, at Matan Torah, the Eibishter put into every Yid another battery, another resource of Asius, that when they speak Divrei Torah, they will be using Asius HaTorah. And when you say Divrei Torah, using Asius HaTorah, it becomes an inyan from Beligavu. So it's a very original, this mime is a very original approach to Matan Torah. And I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to go straight to it. Number 12, page Kup Ayin Sif Dalet. This is also true in Torah. The idea of Torah is associated with words, speech. Not only that you can speak Torah, but that you must speak Torah. And again, I'm inserting. Before Matan Torah, they also spoke Torah. They didn't communicate telepathically. But when they spoke Torah, the key was the ideas. After Matan Torah, when you're speaking Torah, the key is also just the recitation, the words themselves. And he brings you Poshet Nigla. Because what the Pasuk says, that the Pasuk says, right, it's in Sefer Yeshua, the Torah has to be in your mouth. And specifically, he breaks it down. It's obviously true that the written Torah, Tanakh, scripture, is associated with Dibur, which is proof of this is which is why the halacha is that Gam Am Ha'aretz, even a simple person, She'enim even a Philippidish Hamilas doesn't even understand the meaning of the words. Mevorich Bechas HaTorah makes the bracha on the Torah. Kedem Amida Se'esias Shabbat Torah, before he speaks the words of the Torah. And by the same token, on the other hand, before you make the brachas on the Torah, thinking Torah is permitted before brachas Torah. Only the speech is prohibited. Bracket va'av shetev yeser gam. Even though halachically it's preferred, that before you make brachas Torah, you shouldn't even think divrei Torah. Says the Rebbe, this is a chumrah in not thinking divrei Torah before brachas Torah. Aval ha'isru, what you're not allowed is raksha le'ledaber b'divrei Torah. You're not allowed to speak words of Torah. Kedem brachas Torah, before you make the bracha on the Torah. So Rabbi say, he brings Pashan halachas and nigla, right? Torah shebeksav. On the one hand, you're makayim limud Torah by saying the psukim. You don't have an idea what the words mean. And if you have no idea what the words mean and you say those words, you're allowed to, and you're mechuyev to make brachas Torah. If you were thinking Torah, you don't need brachas Torah. It's better not to think Torah without brachas Torah, but you don't need to have brachas Torah for thought. So we see right away in halacha that there's a special relationship between the brachas on the Torah, which means the mitzvah of Torah, and the words of Torah, shebeksav, even though we don't know what we're saying. So when it comes to Torah shebeksav, clearly the inyan of Torah, as we know it, is dibur. Now, how was it before the Torah was given? There was no such thing as the Torah shebeksav and the Torah shebal peh, right? There was the sfeichel Torah, and the idea was to understand it, I presume. At Matan Torah, the Eibush gave us the Tanakh, and when it comes to the Tanakh, the key is the words, and with that alone you make a bracha. Says the Rebbe, moreover, l'gam Torah shebal peh, to be sure, even when it comes to Torah shebal peh, shenyon has saga, the whole idea of Torah shebal peh is to understand. Which is why if one doesn't understand what he's saying, it's not considered learning at all, because the idea of Torah shebal peh is the svaras. Says the Rebbe, nevertheless, Matzina, we find but it's nevertheless associated with speech, like the Gemara says based on the pasuk. Which goes for the pasuk says Chayim heim l'meitziyehem, that it's life to those who speak it, to bring it forward. But Doja Chazal says the Gemara l'meitziyehem pedavke. This is the mitzvah of saying it b'dibur. So we find that even though Torah shebal peh, the ikir of Torah shebal peh is the avon of asag of Torah shebal peh, not the eishis adibur, still the Gemara says that there's a certain chayim that's added only when we say the words b'dibur. Now let's say this from different angles, okay? From one angle, it's what it is, right? Torah shebeksav is the words, Torah shebal peh is the svaras and the ideas. From another angle, the Rebbe says this, the Rebbe made a hadrin in Tafshin Yud on Chafav, which was the yahrzeit of his father. It was the year Kvayachal when he wasn't yet the Rebbe. On Masechta Kedush. That hadrin, I think it's printed in Chelik Tezayin, and look at the Sichas in the Eitz office. But now it's printed in the Teres Menachem, in Tafshin Yud. Rabbi Khan wrote to his father about this hadrin that the Rebbe's editing was so strong. The Rebbe put so much koyach into the editing of the Maimon, this hadrin, that it was like he wrote it himself. And the hadrin has an interesting introduction. In the introduction to the Hadin, the Rebbe says that there's different Darkei Halimud, and he mentions two of them. He says you have the Darkei Halimud of Poilin, which is Derech HaPilpul. Pilpul means to bring different things together. Then the Rebbe mentions what's called the Litvish and Lenin, often plots to everything should be clear al Assad. And then the Rebbe says, but there's another Derech HaLimud which you don't find that people should engage, and that is the diuk in words and letters. And the Rebbe says the reason there's no such Derech HaLimud is because in Torah Shebaal Peh the words are not important, the ideas are important. What's supposed to be medayik in a word or in a letter in Torah Shebaal Peh is from a perspective of what Torah Shebaal Peh is not necessary, useful, or relevant, because in Torah Shebaal Peh the words don't matter, the ideas matter. So therefore, traditionally, there was the Litvish and Lenin, there was the Derech of Pilpul, and there maybe had been other Darkei Halimud, but there is no Derech to be medayik in words. The Rebbe says, nevertheless, we find Achreinim the medayik in words, and in the footnote they bring over there, the Rebbe brings from the Shuvas Divnei Nechem Dobrov the medayik in words. So the Rebbe says, I'm going to say a Hadin, and the whole Hadin is based on analysis of words. It's the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, and the end of Masechet Kedushin, and he tears it apart with such a preciseness, such a beauty. And individual words that separate the Bavli and the Yerushalmi take on meaning in that Hadin. I have to say that I can't, I have a vague recollection of what the end of Masechet Kedushin is about. It's about teaching a umnis to your son and teaching him Torah, but I don't remember the Hadin. I learned the Hadin more than 20 years ago, and it's not fresh in my mind. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but this introduction I remember. And I think that introduction is connected to what the Rebbe is saying here. Torah Shebaal Peh, the words don't matter because the words are simply carrying the ideas. The ideas don't have an inherent value. Says the Rebbe Basanita Zeh Poshet. We find in Chazal priority or significance attributed to the words themselves. Like it says in the Pasuk, Chaim Hem L'Meitzeim, and the Gemara says L'Meitzeim Bepeh, and the other Lashon Vesta Charucha V'Kol HaMach Evadim Mishtameres, and so on. There's a point of saying Divrei Torah. Here the Rebbe is not just talking about saying Divrei Torah, but the words. The words of Torah Shebaal Peh are precise. It's as if you were to say that not only the ideas of Torah from the Eibishter, but the words of the Eibishter from the Eibishter, and not only the words of Torah Shebeksava from the Eibishter, but even the words of Torah Shebaal Peh from the Eibishter as well, even though they come from people. And the Torah Shebaal Peh is an evolution, right? There's many stages in Torah Shebaal Peh. There's Tanoim, there's Ameroim, there's Savoroi, there's Goinim, there's Rishonim, there's Early Achrenim, there's Later Achrenim, and what we call Achreinei Achreinim. The Rebbe is saying that the Torah is not only in the Svaris, the Torah is in the words. And it's not only that the words have a Kedusha, and it's not only that the words add to the remembering it, to the understanding it. It's that the words carry the infinity. When you say it in the language of Torah, Lashon Torah, the Asius of Divrei Torah carries an Ein Sof. Because at Matan Torah, the Eibush gave us words. We had words from before, we were human before Matan Torah. Pardon me. He gave us Torah words. Let's keep reading. Va'af, you can ask a question. Of Tzadik. Is it not true that the most important thing in learning Torah is mitzvahs? Even Torah is the mitzvah of analyzing, delving deeply into the analysis of Torah. Which also Ben Zagal Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch. There's a mitzvah to study Torah day and night. Which is the mitzvah of saying Torah b'dibur. Nitchis is pushed away mipnei mitzvah when it comes to a mitzvah which somebody else can't do for you. So the inyan of learning Torah day and night is supplanted because of that. Then there's a mitzvah of knowing Torah as opposed to learning Torah, as opposed to saying Torah. When it comes to knowing Torah, which is the analysis of Torah intellectually, is greater than stam saying words of Torah. This is the mitzvah of knowing Torah, and even when it's ef shalasa, the achedim, Talmud Torah is not pushed away. Now I don't know what this is about. I didn't look it up, but the Rebbe is saying that the chiyuv to learn Torah day and night. The chiyuv to learn Torah day and night is supplanted by any mitzvah that you need to do. That is the chiyuv of knowing Torah. The chiyuv of knowing Torah is not supplanted by another mitzvah because it's equal to another mitzvah. I have to do that other mitzvah. I have to do this mitzvah. And what is this mitzvah? To know Torah. It means to understand the Torah. So the question is, why are we making such a big deal out of the recitation of words? The recitation of words is nitchis from any other mitzvah. And the ideas of Torah, Ian of Torah, is considered a mitzvah like any other. And just like another mitzvah could be deicha because of Talmud Torah, another mitzvah is deicha because you have to know Torah. It's nitchel because you have to know Torah. Umizem move on, which proves, says the Rebbe, she'ikir mitzvah the Talmud Torah, the primary mitzvah of learning Torah is Iyun Torah. It's not the words but the concepts. So we're back to the first statement. In Torah Shabbat we'll agree that there's inyan of Asius. But in Torah Shabbat there's two Torahs. There's learning Torah and then there's knowing Torah. Learning Torah is less than knowing Torah. And knowing Torah is ideas, it's not the words. So why are we saying that all of Torah, both Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat are connected to words? So the Rebbe answers, Mikomoka. Gam mitzvahs iyana Torah misachesas ledibur. Even when a person is engaged in learning Torah to know and understand it, Torah is associated with words. What tzricha liyas b'dibur has to be with speech. Now the Rebbe doesn't bring a proof for this. He leaves it. He says, I just want you to know as a matter of fact that even iyun ha-Torah, that means the idea of Torah, which is about the idea of knowing Torah, is also associated with speech. And he brings you a mystical proof. We find in Sfarim, there are certain Sfarim that show the link between individual mitzvahs and different individual parts of the body. Specifically Sefer Charedim. That in this Sefer Charedim and in others, mitzvahs Talmud Torah lepeh. The mitzvah of learning Torah is connected to the mouth. Now, if mitzvahs Talmud Torah is be'ikri yediyas ha-Torah, and yediyas ha-Torah is be'ikri iyun, it should be the mayach. This proves, what does this prove? That even iyun ha-Torah, which is not about words, is about the mouth, which is the source of words. So therefore, even though practically, actionably, actually, the highest inyan of Torah, which is iyun, is the inyan of thought, but mystically that thought is associated with the mouth. Which is the concept of dibur. Now, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. We have a question and an answer. Yeah? The question was, Torah has a number of levels. The highest, the most important level of Torah is Yediyas HaTorah, understanding Torah. And Yediyas HaTorah is not about dibur. So why do we say that the Chiddush of Torah Shabbat is dibur? So the Rebbe says, because in Kabbalah, they link Torah to Peh. So I'm going to tell you what I think it means, although I don't know what I'm talking about. Very simple. It's true that the Yediyas HaTorah is in the mind, not in the mouth. But Yediyas HaTorah also has Eisiyas HaTorah. Maybe it's not Eisiyas HaDibur, but Eisiyas HaMachshava. But Eisiyas HaTorah, as opposed to other Eisiyas. And perhaps this is why Torah is connected to Peh, to underscore that the Ikar Chiddush of Torah isn't the Higoyin, but the Eisiyas. In other words, if the Sefer Charedim would say that Torah is connected to the Mayach, what would you assume? Torah is connected to the Mayach because the Mayach is the place of Seichel. He says, no, Torah is in the heart, in the mouth. Because mouth is the place of words. Even though there are words which are not spoken, they're thought, but the Inyan Ha'ois is associated with the Peh. That's how I'm understanding what the Rebbe is trying to argue. The idea that Torah is connected to Oisius means Be'ikir Eisius Hadibur. And even when you're talking about Iyun HaTorah, where the Eisius Hadibur are not important, the only thing that's important is the Iyun, which is Machshava. Then also the Eisius of the Rekir. Why? My opinion, because when you have the right Oisius, you have the believable of Torah. If you have Oisius HaTorah on a level of Machshava, that opens you up to the believable of Torah. But if you're using worldly Oisius to understand the Torah, you're not going to experience that believable. I just gave you an interpretation of these few lines of the Maimed. I don't know if it's true at all, but the Rebbe doesn't explain. So, the Rebbe says the link between learning Torah and speech is hard to find, short of the fact that the Mukabalim connect Torah to Peh, not to Mayach. Let me move on. Okay? Well, and now comes the Rebbe's question. We just spent 2/3 of a page showing that in Teira Shebiksav and in Teira Shebal Peh, and I right away brought in that Sikha from the Rebbe, that you can be medactic in the words of Teira Shebal Peh. And even in Iyun HaTeira, Oisies, and I guess on some level Oisies HaDibur, are primary. So the Rebbe says right to the same kasha again, we all know Teira is a lesson. And of course, this is one of the Yom the Rebbe koch so much, right? This Teira Meloshne Ra is Zoyer. And the Rebbe made this into a household word over the course of his Nesias. And he was religious about it. The Rebbe said every single word of Teira has to be Teira, otherwise it's not Teira. And he would take the most obscure ideas in Teira and grind and grind and grind until he found a practical lesson for us today here now. If Teira is Meloshen Heira, what do words have to do with Teira Meloshen Heira? Words are like a segula. They carry the ideas. Teira Meloshen Heira means Teira teaches a lesson. How was that connected to words? Hainu, top of page Shin Kufayin Afna. Shalim with the Teira B'Shvilei Desamai Sashiyas, in the study of Teira to know what to do, how to live. And I guess you could include in that also Bidram Midas and Deis Nechenes and things of this sort. The most important thing is to know what to do and how to do it and how to understand it. Why do we insist in this Maimer that Teira is connected to words? And again, when we say word, you don't mean the phenomena of speech, which includes the Heimitzois and the Kechatziruf and the Ruach Lamalala. We mean Poshet the Yoisius. And again, I told this to you in my introduction. I'm going to repeat it again. People were speaking before Matan Teira. But before Matan Teira, people were speaking oisius of a human being. When the Eibishter gave us the Teira that they already had from before, what did he give them? He gave us oisius HaTeira. And I guess the way I understand it, he planted in the neshama of a Yid letters, words that are specifically for Teira. And when a person speaks divrei Teira, the credibility of his Teira, not only in the ideas, the credibility of the Teira is in the oisius HaTeira, which he got at Har Sinai, and he didn't have them before. And this is true of Teira Shebiksav, and it's true of Teira Shebal Peh, and it's true even of Iyun. So the Rebbe is asking a question. Teira is about knowledge. Teira is about life. Why are we making such a big deal out of words? And the answer is because Teira is about infinity. That's going to be the answer. I'm sort of cheating. And the infinity is in the words, not in the ideas. Now the beginning is going to sound very the same. It's classic. It's the typical Shavuos thesis of the Rebbe, but he's going to go in a different direction. What happened? The Rebbe gave us a Teira, there was a tying together of the spiritual and the material. The classic Medrash, it says, a king made a decree in his country. Those who find themselves high, from the word Ram, cannot descend into the valley, which is Syria. Those who find themselves in the valley are not allowed to ascend to those who live in the hills. And the marshal goes forward that the king one day wakes up and he says, and then of course he says, Ani Hamascha. The Eibishter, the king, breaks this decree and he establishes that the walls that those that are on high, named HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can descend below. And through this, the Tachtenim can ascend above. In other words, when the Eibishter gave us the Teira, he created Kishor the Ruchnius and Gashmius, a tie between what is spiritual and what is material. In other words, we bring purity to the physical. And of course, in most Maimorim, this means a physical esreg, it means a physical klaf of tefillin, a physical matbeah for tzedakah, or a physical item of any sort which is being used in kiyum mitzvah, beginning of course with the guf hagashmi of the person himself. But here it's a little different. And it continues. It's different than it was before. The Ovis were unique. That not only did they learn Teira before the Teira was given, but they actually did mitzvahs before the Teira was given. Before the Teira was given. They were not in a position to bring elevation to the physical thing. Like it says in Chassidus, the Yankov Avinu used makos to do the inyan of tefillin. After he used those maklas to do the inyan of tefillin, he could have taken those maklas and used them for a fence. For parochial, ordinary activity. because the physical sticks did not acquire a kedusha. It was just a symbol that the sticks represented and do with the kavan of tefillin. And the same is true at all mitzvahs, with maybe the exception of the physical act of bris milah, which Hashem commanded Avraham Avinu. But without exception, when the Ovis did mitzvahs, the physical things they used in the mitzvah were only symbolic. And after the mitzvah was done, those physical things were latzara pitzlichos. They were ordinary. They had no sanctity. And we continue. And once the Torah was given, here they came on mitzvahs to the doing of mitzvahs. Now, when tefillin become unfit to be used, they have to be treated with respect because they are called a chatzah shel mitzvah or chatzah shel kedusha. They have a sanctity in the gashmi itself. Right? This is classic. This is typical, Rebbe. Bit like that. Yeah. Why was it a kedem matan Torah? They brought the ruchnis into the world, but they couldn't bring the ruchnis to the level of elevating a physical. And after Matan Torah, the ruchni is brought into the world to the extent that the physical thing itself becomes godly. The light which I was able to bring into the world. In other words, the Torah that was available to people. For the Eibishter gave us the Torah, which is a light that was relative to the creation, not more. This light should not be brought forward into the physical things, to give it clarity, or to give it refinement. So because the energy of Torah was a finite energy, it could reach into the world in a finite way. It couldn't physically transform the physical world. Now you could say here also that a different Maimer would give you a different version of this. But in this Maimer, the Rebbe is putting primacy on Oyer. The Oyer of Kodem Matan Torah was a limited Oyer, so its influence in the physical world was a limited influence. Mashain came Matan Torah when the Eibishter gave us the Torah Nimshach Er Shalei Lifi Yarachan Ebrahim. The light that was brought into this world is an infinite light, beyond the worth, the measure of the creations and their efforts. Because there was a higher light, you could bring a refinement in the physical as well. So, the Oves could not bring godliness to the Dava Gashmi, and we can. What is the reason? Why the Torah before Matan Torah was a finite earth, and therefore it couldn't elevate a physical thing. And after Matan Torah is an infinite light, and therefore it could elevate a physical thing. And what the answer is? Words. At Matan Torah, all Hashem gave us was words. We had the Torah before. We had the Torah after. That means the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu we had before. The wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu we have after. And of course, if you had 2 eyes, you can sit and be mafli what this means, the Eibishter's Chochmah. But we didn't have the words of the Eibishter's Chochmah. And because we didn't have the words of the Eibishter's Chochmah, now this is me talking now, not the Maimed, we were using foreign words to carry the Eibishter's Chochmah. Because we were using foreign words to carry the Eibishter's Chochmah that reached us was finite. When at Matan Torah, the Eibishter gave us Oisius HaTorah, the words that are designed to carry Torah, so now you have the right words for the right ideas. So now the words allow that the ideas that are delivered are infinite. It is almost as if you're saying the Torah before and Torah after the same Torah. The world before and the world after was the same world. You didn't have enough power in the Torah to change the world until you had the right words to carry that Torah. And at Matan Torah, this is what occurred. So I hope you see how different this Maimed, how unique this Maimed is. This Maimed is saying that the Bittul HaGezerah wasn't that the Eibishter made a change in the world, a change in anything. He just gave us a new tool. What is the new tool? Oisius. And because we have this new tool of Oisius, yesterday I was able to learn and understand Torah, but the power from that Torah that I brought into this world was finite because I was using the wrong words to carry that idea. After the Torah is given, now I have the right words to carry that idea, and therefore I carry the infinity of that idea, and that's why I was able to transform the world. Let's learn. See how, like I said before, sometimes my Morim seem to be saying such similar things, and they're saying things which are very different. Let's start from number 15 again. The Pshat is as when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he introduced to the world speech. Which is why the Torah was given in the desert, like we said before. Adam cannot sit there because it's higher than the Madrega of Adam. True Bechinas B'li Gevot, level of B'li Gevot, which is beyond the limitations of creations. Which aspect of the Torah is desert-like and is beyond limitations of creations? The words, just the words. Dibber, Oisius. That's the connection between the word Midbar, which is associated with Daimim on the one hand, and Lamalam Seichel on the other, and the word Medaber. So here it's not the pshat. Before we couldn't speak, and now we could speak. Before we spoke Teda with Oisius of Laz. Now we're speaking Teda with the Oisius of Teda. And as a result, it's carrying Etzem Teda. Says the Rebbe V'Zoshen as Chadash Matan Teda. This is what changed when the Rebbe gave us the Teda. And he explains. Before the Teda was given, we already had the Teda. Like it says in the Pasuk, V'Telech L'Dishas Hashem. That Rivka Meinu went to B'Dishas Hashem to find out why she has such a conflicted pregnancy. And the Chazal say that she brings it in Chumash. She went to the yeshiva of Shem and Eib. Furthermore, it says in the Gemara, Avram learned Teda. And even according to that opinion, this is the Ramban, of course. Then in Chutz La'aretz they didn't do mitzvahs, but the only Chutz La'aretz they didn't do mitzvahs, but they still studied Torah. Says the Rebbe Chutz La'aretz had before the Shlahedya the Chazal say befedish, and I don't think the Ramban disagrees. Shalima da Torah yagam b'Chutz La'aretz. They learned Torah outside of Eretz Yisrael, like it says in the pasuk Ves Yehuda Shalach v'Geim Elahedis Lefan of Geshna, that Yehuda was sent ahead to start a Beis HaTalmud, to start a new yeshiva. And of course the Rebbe's famous word, even though Yosef HaTzadik already had a yeshiva, but Yosef HaTzadik was a yeshiva for lack of words of Teirim Derech Eretz. And he wanted Teda Tmima, so he sent Yehuda. In other words, even in Mitzrayim, they learned Teda. So Kiyam HaMitzvahs is a unique thing. Only the Yavis, and according to the Rabban, only not Yisrael. But Limud Teda was everywhere and always. So Manas Chadash Matan Teda. And the answer is before the Teda was given, we had the knowledge, the understanding, and the intellectual reach. In other words, the delving deeply and understanding the ideas of Teda. And of course, you and I think that that's where the Teda is at. The intellectual is of Teda. This is what it's all about. It says that all that intellect is kol zehu b'bechinas gavul. It's all limited. And again, the way I understand what the Rebbe is saying is, it's not the pshat of the limitation in what you're understanding. Since you're understanding using the wrong words, the words don't carry that understanding to the fullest. What you understand is limited. And again, I want to underscore that you could say pshat in this particular moment. That when you say that the understanding is good, it's not because there's something wrong with the Eira Torah. There's something wrong with the Oisius HaTorah. You're saying the right idea in the wrong words, the idea comes across in a less than precise way, and therefore it loses its infinity. Because of this light. Now I'm going to add words. Spoken with foreign words. The light that reaches this world. Because it's passing through a medium of non-Torah words is not infinite and therefore cannot reform, transform, and uplift the Bagashmi. We got the Torah, we got words. And again, we got the right words. And because we got the right words, now it is possible, it'd be possible to bring of the light of Torah. And again, the way I'm reading it, that we always had the Oisius carry the Torah in such a way that the infinite Torah reaches this world. Kanal, as we explained before. We said before, the highest Maila comes across in speech. And again, I'm putting words into the Rebbe's mouth, and it's a sin. But this is how I understand the Maim, and I'm teaching you the Maim. There were words before. People spoke many languages before Matan Torah. There was Shivim Umes, Shivim L'Shenis, from the time of Afloga, from the Migdal Bavel. But there was no Torah. The ideas of Torah they didn't have the words, so they used words from a different language to support the Torah. The combination did not allow for the Belig Vol of the air to come through. When the Eibush gave us the right words, so now we can carry the ideas with the perfect medium. And Shemitzad Eir, when you have this Oyer, Dafke, F Sheli is Bida V'Zeich Agashmi, you now bring the infinity of the Torah into the world, and it can bring a clarity and a purification to the physical. That's why we associate it with speech, like we said on the previous page. Number one, Number two, even though still we say and number three, even Eon of Torah. With the Ikir Seichel, it says in Sefer Charedim that the part of the body associated with Eon of Torah is Peh, which is Vaiter Eis. Says the Rebbe, why because you need the ACS HaTeta, which is the lowest level, the Daimim, to carry the oil, the Ein Seif of Teda. So what I am proposing is when the Eibishter gave the Teda, and he introduced to the world the Koyach of Dida B'Tachtoina, to be Mavada Dava Gashmi. And as it says in this Maimer, because he's bringing into the world an aid which is believable, which is Shalei Leferach and Evrayim, as opposed to the aid which was Leferach and Evrayim, I am reading into this Maimer the Pshat, the oil was really always the same. But the oil's ability to reach the world was changed, because before Matan Teda you were using the wrong ACS, and now you're using the right ACS. And when you use the right ACS, then in other words, the ACS HaTorah reveal oil HaTorah. When you're speaking Eid HaTeda and Seichel HaTeda, but you're using Ace, which is not Ace HaTeda, what comes from the Teda into the world is only Leferach and Evrayim. And this is the Pshat HaTeda Mitzvah Hatefilla, the Teda associated with words, with speech. The greatest thing about the Teda, it's not the understanding of the Teda. They had this also before. The primary inyan of Teda, when Teda was given, is Hadibur, the Teda Dafke, it's the words. And I am going to say again, I know that this is very brazen, that the Pshat is that it's not that the Beligvul is in the Asias. There's for sure a Beligvul in the Asias, but the Beligvul in the Asias is an Atzmias Dika Beligvul, it's a Helam Dika Beligvul. Is that the Beligvul allow the Asias allow that the Beligvul of the air should come into this world. Later on in the Maimed, the Rebbe is going to talk about the words Tzelem Admus. The Rebbe is about the words Tzelem Admus. Like Nasa Adam B'Tzalmenu Kedem was saying. He's going to connect it to the Nefesh Elokisa and the Nefesh Abahamis. You'll see it when we get to it. The sugya of Talmud Mus is found in a lot of places in Hasidus. It's a familiar sugya. It's not so uncommon. And the philosophy that supports the difference between Tzelem and Mus, and of course when you look in Rashi and other Rishonim, you get different ideas, maybe even conflicted ideas. But in Hasidus, the way they explain Tzelem and Mus is these words. Tzelem, they say, is Tzura Atzmis. And the mus they say is tzura mi tzura. Those are the technical definitions. Tzelem is pnimius, the mus is chitzonius. Tzelem is called tzura atzmis, and the mus is called tzura mi tzura. What does this mean? In short, it means this: when your subconscious brings forward an idea to your consciousness, so at least on a certain level, and at least when it comes to certain things, it's not premeditated, right? You try to understand something, you don't understand something, you're frustrated by your inability, and then you have what they call in Athens a eureka moment, yeah? Svet klor. Something emerges from the subconscious to your consciousness. What emerges from your subconscious to your consciousness is a resolution to a problem that comes to you as a flash of an idea, but that flash of an idea has a form. That flash of an idea, for lack of words, is carried by a certain letters. How that flash comes from your subconscious to your conscious. Now you have to do an analysis of it, right? A flash, a new idea enters into your mind. You say, oh wow, how amazing, how exciting. But then you need to test it. Then you need to break it down. Then you need to analyze it. What's called in our culture, bina. And then you can determine whether that flash had credibility, whether that flash of chokhmah, that initial flash of chokhmah, did or did not have credibility, right? That's how it works. So there's a human condition, which I call, in other words, there's a basic human condition to take every idea and to modify it. This is certainly true when two people are talking. If you and I are having a conversation and I share an idea with you, you have a need to say what I said in different words to suit you. But this is even true when I'm having a conversation with myself. When my subconscious gives me a flash of an idea and I'm processing it, I want to take that new idea and put it into an old and a familiar form so that I can relate to it easier. That transition is called changing from tselem to dmus. Tselem means my subconscious gave me an idea along with a form. Dmus means I'm holding on to the idea and I'm changing the form. And Chassidus says that the process of modifying the tselem and bringing it over to the mus is unbelievably costly. In other words, when your subconscious gives you an idea, assuming it's a real idea coming from the real subconscious, from the real intellectual, not only is the new idea precise, but the way the subconscious delivered it to your consciousness, in other words, the words, the form are also precise. And if you take that idea and you reform it to a more familiar form that you know from before, you have a very small fraction of what your subconscious gave you, and you lost an enormous amount, because for the subconscious idea that's now becoming conscious to carry all the possibility, all the promise that the subconscious delivered in that, so to speak, package, you have to hold on to the original form. And it takes an enormous amount of discipline not to do this. The knee-jerk need to, in other words, something. Anytime somebody tells you something that you don't know yet, you immediately say, you correlate it to what's familiar. I have a phrase that I've been using for many years now with my students. Correlation is always simplification. There's correlation of one idea with another. There's also correlation of words. You can say it this way and you can say it this way. If your neshama felt that this idea should have been said differently, she would have said it differently. Your neshama elected or selected to say it this way, because not only is the neshama delivering to your consciousness this idea for whatever schus you have, whatever preparation you made, whatever circumstances exist that allow it to emerge, but the form, the oisius, that carrying it are very precise. And it's one of the most frustrating components of communication. And what I'm saying is, it's not only one of the frustrating components of communication when it's Reuven speaking to Shimon, it's one of the most frustrating components of communication is when Reuven speaking to Reuven. I'm a teacher, and I was once a student. And I'm not the world's most diligent person and the most disciplined person, but God knows that in my lifetime I worked hard to understand about Chassidus. I got out of it. And I would speak to my teachers. I speak to my father a lot, so gesund sein. And in all of our conversations, there was this need to say it in other words. And my teachers, my father, would say, no, I didn't say it this way. And to me, there was no difference between the way he said it and the way I was repeating it. But in reality, what I was doing by repeating it in my words was taking away the aspects of what he said that I didn't understand. And because I didn't understand, they frustrated me. And by repeating them in my own words, I was filing off those edges. I was removing those aspects of the idea that I didn't fully understand, so that I should have, as they say in Yiddish, a kailechdika, a perfect model of the concept. And what I didn't realize, that the aspects that I didn't understand, that's the infinity of the idea. That's the more and the more and the more. And now as a teacher, I experience the same thing on the other side of the coin. I'll tell something to my student, they'll immediately give me back in other words, and I'll scratch my head and I'll say, when I was a teacher, because by them saying it, what they said is true, but it's partial. They're understanding the idea in a limited way. I chose the words I chose because there's so much subtlety behind it. When you rephrase it in a different way, all of that is lost. And what I'm saying to you is that this is not only true when Reuven speaks to Shimon, it's when Reuven's subconscious speaks to Reuven's consciousness. Or if you will, when Reuven's Chochmah speaks to Reuven's Bina. Bina likes to have control. And Bina likes everything to be known. So Bina takes the new idea of Chochmah and puts it into the familiar forms that Bina has from before. And it's a mistake. Bina now has a new piece of information. But because he's taken the new piece of information and putting it in familiar words, he only has the new information as much as the familiar words can carry. If he would have sufficient bittul and allow the flash of Chochmah, which came from the subconscious to the consciousness, to remain in the oisius of Chochmah, there is an infinity there. And that, I think, is the pshat in the mind. The Eibishter gave us the Torah, he gave us words. Before the Eibishter gave us the Torah, we also had the Torah, and we had words to speak the Torah. But all of the Eisius HaTorah that existed pre-Matan Torah were the Mus words. They were words that were part of a different system of knowledge, like philosophy or whatever other Chokhmas they had in the ancient world. When you try to carry Torah using the Eisius from a different Chokhmah, it's a poor fit. So you understand well. But the possibility of what there is in this Eid is lost, because those Eisius can't carry it in a satisfactory way. Masha Einkein, if you speak Divrei Torah, but Oisius HaTorah, it's the right words. So the Rebbe is saying something fascinating. Again, this is how I understand this Maimed, which is why I'm teaching it this way. And of course, Im Chatasi, Im Shagisi, Adeshem Atev Yechaper, I'm putting words into the Maimed, but I believe that this is the Havana of the Maimed. That in this particular Maimed, there's a couple of Chidushim. Chidush number one, that Dira B'Tachtonim is about Oyer. To transform a physical thing is about Oyer. If the Oyer is infinite, the physical thing is transformed. I know different Maimed give you different versions. That's what it says in this Maimed. Chidush number two, that before the Eibishter gave us the Torah, we had the Torah. But we had the Torah only until Shoresh Mitzvas the aid was limited. And after Matan Torah, we now have the aid, which is higher than Shoresh Mitzvas, which is infinite. What was the change? The change was not in the Torah, the change was in the Oisius that carry the Torah. In other words, if I'm correct, the Oira Torah was always believable. But the Seichel Torah, as people understood it, because before Matan Torah, they didn't have the Oisius that carry Torah, they could only understand it B'chitzenius. And after Matan Torah, we now have words which are Tzura Atzmis. They're the perfect fit for these Oir, and therefore they carry a believable. As much as you learn, there's more and more and deeper and higher and higher. I mentioned to you the other day that the Rebbe talks about Misholim, right? It means a Mashal Mechuven and a Mashal She'enei Mechuven. We use a mashal to explain Torah. Sometimes the mashal is imprecise, and sometimes the mashal is precise. What's the difference? If the mashal came from the nimshal, like a human being is a mashal for Atzilus, is a mashal mechuven, because the other matachten came from Adnal, nishtal shelu behem. Nasa Adnam b'tzalmeinu ked museinu. That's called a mashal mechuven. A mashal she'enei mechuven means you take something from the world, which is not directly connected to this idea in Torah, and you correlate it to teach it. So when you use a mashal mechuven in Torah, the alignment of the mashal and the nimshal is infinite because the mashal came from the nimshal. So now you're going backwards from the mashal to understand the nimshal. Masha'enken, a mashal she'enei mechuvan, the idea that you're understanding is a worldly phenomena, which is limited and has other properties. The relationship between that idea and this concept of Torah is limited, and there's no way for the infinity of the Torah to be communicated to that mashal. I'm saying a similar thing here, but not about mishalim, but pashut words. If you speak divrei Torah in Asis, which are not Oisius HaTorah, you get a Hasaga, you get a Havana, you get a Yediyah, but it's Gvul. The Gilui is finite, so it can't change the Gashmi. But if you have the Oisius that are meant, that the Eibishter designed, to carry this Oira Torah, the whole believable Torah comes into this world. And to use Oisius of the Goy, not just the Seichel HaTorah, but the Ein Seif, the Tainub, the Eira Torah. And that's why it's able to uplift the Gashmi as well. And that's what I think the Rebbe is saying here in this Maimed. That there's a relationship between Doimim and Medaber, and the relationship between Doimim and Medaber means the Medaber could speak without Asius if he has other Asius. When the Medaber speaks with other Asius, there's no believable. The believable is only when the Medaber speaks with his own Asius, with the right Asius. And when it comes to Torah, this is what the Eibishter gave us when the Eibishter gave us it. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop now. There's Perek Hey and Perek Vav to learn. I could filibuster. I mean, the shir is not that long. It's only 45 minutes. By interrupting, I'm giving myself an opportunity to, so to speak, regroup and come back to this in a wholesome way. The way it stands now, I'm going to give this shir tomorrow morning. But if I get into a funny mood, maybe I'll do it sometime this afternoon. I'm not promising, but the way it on Facebook is going to be up anyway, and YouTube is going to be up anyway. So I'm stopping it.